Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session titled And Still I Rise, Reflections on Being a Behaviorist in an Upended World. I'm Kathryn Fraser. I'm the Behavioral Medicine Coordinator at the Halifax Health Family Medicine Residency Program in Daytona Beach.
And I am Terri Wall. I am the Director of Behavioral Health at the St. Vincent's Family Medicine Residency Program in Jacksonville, Florida.
What we wanted to do today was spend some time talking to you about our experience as behaviorists and really as just human beings dealing with our recent national crises of the coronavirus pandemic and how that has affected us professionally and personally, and also the racial and social unrest and other things that are going on in our society that have really caused us to have extra layers of stress and anxiety. And we wanted to talk a little bit about how that has affected us as people in a profession who are dedicated to dealing with the stress and anxiety of others. So thanks very much for joining me today, Terri. I know we've had some conversations about how much things have changed for us in the last few years. And I wanted to start off the day by just um, going back to the beginning before, and even talking about the beginning is so nebulous because when did it actually really start? But one of the memories that's sort of emblazoned in my mind is I was at a celebration with my daughter, my college age daughter, and my high school age son. We were at Universal Studios and we were having the time of our lives. It was March 7th, so a day before my daughter's birthday. And they started talking about coronavirus. There were some worries about, well, you need to wash your hands a lot, you need to use a lot of hand sanitizer. And we were focused on that. Not They hadn't really talked about social distancing, but we were aware that we were in big crowds and so on. We were watching a parade. It was Mardi Gras. It was so much fun. We watched a concert, and within a few days, everything changed. And they started talking about this highly contagious uh, virus that was going around, and one of my children's spring breaks got extended for a week, and the other one got extended for a week. Next thing I knew, they were home for 6 months, and we all had to deal with being under the same roof, and me continuing to work, them continuing to do their school virtually. And I remember going into work and just thinking to myself, why are we not dedicating this entire faculty meeting to dealing with coronavirus? Everyone was still kind of just walking around business as usual, getting memos from administration and so on. And I had become really concerned about, first of all, everyone's safety. And then as the days went by, I realized, our patients are not going to be able to come in. Our residents are not going to be able to come over for new conference as usual. And yet, all these, we need to continue to take care of the needs of everyone. And so my brain was scrambling to figure out how am I going to take care of my patients. We had to switch to virtual. That was a very bumpy change in our organization. And I just remember, I tend to anticipate other people's anxiety and stress. I guess that's sort of my role as a therapist and a behaviorist. And somehow I was ahead of everyone else. And that was really stressing me out because I felt like, we needed to figure out how to fix all these problems as soon as possible. And others were not as concerned.
So it's so interesting because I share many of your same experiences personally, although my work experiences were a little bit different. But being in Florida with you, a number of my children were on spring break. And in fact, so I have four kids. Most of the people out there probably know that about me. But my oldest daughter had come home from Michigan for spring break. My college age daughter had come home. My high school age son was home, and they were all going to this music festival with my husband. And Florida was talking about shutting down, and yet they were still going to go. And they're like, well, this is probably the only music fest of the whole year, and we're going. And um, so they went, and luckily they were safe and they came home. And then nobody really left. And so, yeah, they were home for 6 months. And then I have a son who is a senior in college. We didn't get to have his college graduation. So, there was a lot of fear and emotionality and disappointment, um, and also trying to enjoy the blessings of having everybody back together. Although there was also some stress in having 6 adults living in a house that was not made for 6 adults, and everybody trying to work and do school remotely. At work, it was a little bit different because I feel like we jumped pretty quickly into action around addressing the safety issues. Our program director was out of town when we went into shutdown, so our associate program director was really active in that. But we quickly pulled residents from having to deal with any COVID patients. We quickly moved to strategies in the clinic, and really moved to a kind of a hybrid model of, if you did not need to be on campus because you didn't have clinical responsibilities that day, that we were really encouraged to work from home. And so, that all happened very quickly, and very early on. As we were doing that, I have a behavioral health team really working to get them set up to be virtual. And we were lucky in that we had the support and the resources to make that happen really quickly. So we were all really in action mode, and sort of that, that hurricane preparedness. Those of you who live in hurricane prone states will know exactly what I'm talking about. But we were really in that kind of very action oriented hurricane preparedness mode. What I think we didn't realize at the time is that we would be in that mode. We're still in that mode in some ways. That mode would just last so long, and just the fatigue that creeps in with having to change so often and to prepare, like constantly be re-preparing things. So, I'm really curious because you said, you were really focused on other people's feelings and how they were functioning. It sounds like they weren't really doing that. So I'm curious what that was like for you in your program.
Yeah, sure. And, that's one of the things that we struggle with as behaviorists, as far as emotional management, helping our residents with their own mental health, helping them with their patients and so on, that we take that on as our role. And, I'm sort of used to people, not necessarily my fellow physicians, not necessarily getting on board right away. But this seems so intense and so different and so disruptive. And I will say that the fear and anxiety about COVID itself, that really started to kick up in the residents fairly early on. And so I arranged different Zoom support groups, which actually went quite well. And incidentally, we did not have a stay-at-home work order. We had the opposite. We had to keep coming in. And I just remember just being terrified coming into work. I remember being just feeling a sense of anger towards our hospital administrators and our program administrators. And, why are we being forced to come in? I remember having to sit in my small counseling room with patients. And that was before we were all wearing masks. And so I had to deal with my own fears of getting sick, my fears of taking it home to my family and making them sick. And eventually things, people got on board. However, it was a slow start. We also had a really slow start with our telehealth, which was frankly excruciating for me because I had to cancel appointments with my patients, and I knew that they were highly stressed out. So that was really wearing on me. So it's just very wearying in the beginning. I did have I was approached by our clinic manager to try and do something for stress management for the staff. She was actually one of the first people, and so I ended up doing it, just giving them some crafts to do. It's amazing what coloring can do when people are stressed out. But definitely, it was overwhelming. We really struggled with the virtual teaching. We're still struggling with that. And just the frustrations all around, the physical fears of getting sick, the fears of not being able to teach the way we always do, the lack of interaction, the lack of, being together. So it was all just very overwhelming. I wanted to read everything I could, listen to all kinds of podcasts and so on. It was really information overload for me.
Yeah, we had my struggles were slightly different because being off campus, um, I really had this sense of disconnection from my work family, and yet was feeling this need to really be very present and to help kind of help with the emotional regulation just of the program. And it's hard to do that when you're remote. And so I did have a little bit of a crisis of faith in there where I was like, what's my role? Do they need me? Like, am I relevant anymore? Kind of this moment of, okay, I need to redefine what my role is going to look like for the foreseeable future in this kind of remote environment, and how can I make connections? Because we were in pretty much preparedness mode, nobody wanted to do virtual support groups, and they're all kind of like, we're not doing that, we're not doing that, we're not doing that. And so and we were still doing like meetings half and half, so some people could be in the room and everybody else would be virtual. And when you're the one who's virtual, you are very disconnected if there are people in a room. And so so I really advocated to change that, and that did help. But I'll tell you, for me, the turning point came um, when George Floyd was murdered. And that that really shook our program. And we have a very diverse resident group, and that is when they started reaching out for support, wanted to talk, wanted to have support group to talk about their experiences, to talk about what was happening or not happening in the program. They helped us organize to do a march for the White Coats for Black Lives, which was a very joining experience in our program. And so when that happened and they really needed and wanted support, it kind of gave me a sense of purpose again, because they were turning to me for that support, which I feel very honored that they felt like I was an ally to them and could talk about it. But that's when I started to have that kind of overwhelming drinking from the fire hose experience, because while I have done reading and I try to keep myself educated, I really felt this need to just consume everything that I possibly could and all the resources that were coming in, and to make sure that I was educated and informed. And so not only between kind of helping people manage emotions and still be able to function, but also managing my own like need to learn and be educated. I did have a real turning point where I was like, okay, this is not sustainable. Like, what I am doing is not sustainable for me. And really thinking about how I wanted to spend my energy, where did I want to spend my energy, and was able to work out a really nice balance between being in the office and being at home, and being connected in a virtual way and being connected personally. Um, and and now educating at more of a sustainable pace, more like drinking from a water fountain than a fire hose. And so that was a real turning point, I think, both for me personally in my role, and also for our program as a whole. We've just had some really powerful conversations, and it's we've just really come together in a way that is very cohesive, and I think has helped keep us kind of afloat in this very difficult period.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to your experiences with um, helping your residents and faculty through uh, all the emotional ups and downs and distress over the George Floyd murder.
Yeah,
And
I wonder what that was like for you as a person of color, particularly in your program and just personally.
Yeah, I really appreciate you asking me that question, Terry. And it's really, um, I've been really fortunate to have many dialogues around that. And um, it was a significant moment for us. As you know, I've done this kind of work for several years now. Shameless plug, we're going to be doing some more of this at the plenary on Friday on the difficult conversations on the road to equity. And it opened up difficult conversations. And I would have to say, in response to your question, for me as a person of color, person who's done this kind of work for many years, and a person who experienced her own residents and work family go through this. It has been sad, terrifying, distressing, and also fortunately gratifying that I was able to be there for them and to help us through difficult conversations. And we had several support groups around this, joint resident faculty groups, and we had conversations that we would never have had. And I just really appreciate my colleagues of all backgrounds, my fellow faculty, for being willing to really open up and dive into these conversations. And, you know, as you mentioned, I got to that point of unsustainability also, of really just trying to consume as much as I could to turn around and give that back to others. And I really had to step back and slow down and really carve out time for myself and deal with all the energy in my home with having my adult children at home and so on. And I know for me, in terms of um, self-care, I I enjoy my morning walks even more than ever. I enjoy that quiet time. I appreciate everything around me. I actually, our family, we actually found some cool Netflix series to watch to help us cope and so on. So I'm wondering for you, Terry, what are some of the things that you discovered that were helpful for you in terms of self-care at this
Again, similar sorts of things. I'm so fortunate that I live about 10 minutes from the beach, and the beach is my happy place. And so I do get out to the beach about once a week. I've also really focused on, my meditation and yoga practice, because those are things that can be done alone. My family and I have also watched a lot of interesting series. I know most of us have watched, I'm going to forget the name, Tiger King or whatever, so, which was interesting to say the least. But, the other thing really that has helped is being in contact with colleagues, both my Florida colleagues and our consortium group has done a great job of staying connected, maybe even more so now than ever. And that's been very helpful. And the group of colleagues that I've met through the BFEF, a little shameless plug for that as well, that we stay in contact with, and we text, and sometimes it's resource based, and sometimes it's support based, and sometimes it's just fun. Funny little lighthearted things, which do so much to just brighten my day and bring perspective. And also doing that with family. We did some family trivia remotely for a while, and really having to be creative about having those really nourishing and sustaining connections. How
time? Yeah,
about for you?
certainly. Well, I think as I think of what's been helping me through, the word that comes to mind really is gratitude. Just being able to enjoy as I mentioned, time spending with my family. My son loves to cook, and he and I have been trying many, many recipes, most of which work out well. Not always, but most of them. So that's been really lovely. Um, and just I've connected actually with family and friends around the country, around the world, honestly, doing Zoom talks that I wouldn't have done. So that's been great. I also try to just continue to stay grateful and feel positive about all the adapting to teaching that we've had to do, and virtual teaching, all the different resources that people have sent me. And that's wonderful. And again, I collect them, I keep them in a file. I try not to make myself read everything because that would be just way too much. And so I try to feel encouraged and positive about the future and what are the positive things that we can take out of this. And certainly I have been given permission to talk even more to the residents about self-care. And that is my most important role as far as I'm concerned.
I agree wholeheartedly. COVID hasn't been all bad. And so really trying to take away the real positives from that and the flexibility and creativity that we've been allowed to use during this time period. I do miss hugs. I do miss seeing my wonderful colleagues in person, and I do very much look forward to that coming back. But really, I think those next steps are, trying to maintain the good and continuing to find creative ways to mitigate the challenges. And so it will, we still have more time, unfortunately. We will still get to practice. So, and, just that real self-compassion. I love Brene Brown, and she talks about FSTs. And so go listen to her podcast. You can figure out what that is. But, and just as always, Kathryn, with gratitude that we were able to have this conversation.
I am so thankful to you, Terri, and we may not have done this had it not been for the age of COVID. So thank you so much. Thanks to everyone out there for listening. And we hope that you were able to connect with some of the things that we said. Thank you.